Good to see you as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. सर 2-3 मिनट और वेट कर लेबो सर okay okay oh Alvino sir has also joined, so thank you very much sir for joining us. Okay, good evening everyone. I am Prashant Kumar Sharma, an assistant professor at the Department of Political Science, Vidhan Chandra College, University of Calcutta. I on behalf of the Department of Political some disturbances. Animes, can you mute yourself? Animes, can you mute yourself? Animes, can you mute yourself? Okay, all right. Okay. I, on behalf of the Department of Political Science and IQAC, warmly welcome you all to this international webinar entitled Trajectory of Pakistan's Foreign Policy from Kabul to Kyiv. This webinar has been organized by Department of Political Science in association with the Internal Quality Assurance Cell of our institution. We have got Mr. Paulo Kashaka sir, founder and executive director of the South Asia Democratic Forum, and Dr. Siegfried O. Wolf sir, director of research at the South Asia Democratic Forum and senior researcher at the South Asia Institute, Heidelberg University, Germany, as the distinguished resource person for today's international webinar. So thank you very much, sir, for being with us. And Albino sir, Albino Costa Brass sir, office manager of South Asia Democratic Forum, has also joined. So, sir, I also welcome you all. Thank you very much for joining us. May I now request to the head of our institution, Dr. Ramesh Kaur, Vice Principal, sir, to kindly deliver a formal welcome address. Sir, now it's over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Our respected research person, honorable dignitaries, dear colleague, research scholar, and HOD of the Political Science Department, the convener of the program, and affectionate student. It is really a great pleasure and privilege to be present in the international webinar organized by the Department of Political Science in collaboration with IQAC Bidhan Chandra College. Being the head of the institute, I must congratulate the students and teachers of the Department of Political Science, especially HOD Professor Devdas De and convener of the webinar committee, Professor Prashant Kumar Sharma, as they have taken initiative to organize the international webinar. Being the head of the institute, I must congratulate the respected research person, Professor Paulo Casaka, founder and executive director, South Asia Democratic Forum, Brussels, Belgium, and Dr. Director of Research, South Asia Democratic Forum, Brussels, Belgium, and senior researcher member, South Asian Institute, Heidelberg University, Germany. I would be immensely grateful as they have all responded to our invitation despite their busy schedule. I convey my best wishes to our governing body president and all governing body members for their moral support to organize the international webinar. I do hope that our participant would reap a sound harvest from the discussion. I firmly believe that this type of discussion will be interesting and interactive one. The survey of the day's speech and reciprocal discussion, I do hope that further illumine the minds of the teachers and taught. I wish warm success of the webinar. Once again, thanking you all.
Thank you very much, sir, for your welcome address. May I now introduce to our distinguished chair of this international webinar, Mr. Paulo Casaka. For me, it is indeed an honor to introduce him. Mr. Paulo Casaka is the founder and executive director of the South Asia Democratic Forum, Brussels, Belgium. He is also founder of the International Cooperation Association, registered in Brussels. Mr. Casaka is also founder and senior partner of the consultancy company on sustainable development, which is also registered in Brussels. He was the fellow of the German Marshall Fund of the US in the first semester of 2010. Mr. Casaka was member of the European Parliament from 1999 to 2009, where he chaired the delegation for relations with NATO Parliamentary Assembly. He was a member of the National Parliament in 1992 to 1993 and a member of the Regional Parliament of the Azores in 1990 to 1991. He was a councillor in the permanent representation of Portugal to the European Union from 1996 to 1999. Chief of Staff of the Minister for Territorial Planning and Public Works in 1995 to 1996. Economics advisor for the Socialist fraction in the National Parliament in 1989 to 1990, 1992, 1994 to 1995. He was invited professor at the Technical University of Lisbon in 1995 to 1996. He lectured in the University of Azores from 1980 to 1987 and in 1991, and in the Accounting High School in Lisbon from 1987 to 1989. He is the author of several books and reports on economics and international politics. Sir, I most humbly request you to kindly chair this session. Sir, now it's over to you.
Well, thank you so much for this warm and extensive welcome. I really would like to address to Dr. Carr, the vice principal of the university of the Chandra Ridan Chandra College in the University of Calcutta, my best wishes and my very strong thanks for this invitation. It is for us really an honor to be discussing these issues with you in this framework. Thank you so much, Professor Sharma, for all the care you took in organizing this webinar on these extensive references to my humble person and to this idea of the Kabul to Kiev, which is really a link of dramatic events that have also a big repercussion in South Asia. We will have today a speech from Dr. Siegfried Wolf, who is our main researcher. He is directing research at SADF. He has degrees, master degrees from Heidelberg, and a doctor degree, Doctor of Philosophy degree in 2009 from the South Asia Institute in the Heidelberg University. He is a visiting professor at the Naraswan University in Thailand, a visiting scholar at De La Salle University in Manila in the Philippines. He is an affiliated researcher at the Pakistan Security Research Unit at Durham University in United Kingdom, a former research fellow at the Institute of Political Science and at Heidelberg University, and at the Center des Sciences Humaines in New Delhi, as well as a former visiting fellow at the National University of Science and Technology in Islamabad. Dr. Wolf worked as a consultant to NATO-sponsored periodic and strategic research in assessing Afghanistan-Pakistan issues. He was member of the external expert group of the Afghanistan-Pakistan Task Force of the German Federal Foreign Office and worked as a consultant for the Federal Ministry for the Economic Cooperation and Development in Germany. His latest book is on the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, Concept, Context, Assessment, published by Springer in 2019. And just before passing in the floor, he's going obviously to concentrate on Pakistan foreign policy in relation to this double dramatic event. Let me just tell you that I do think this set of events that some people think are unconnected, well, they are, on one side they are connected, and on the other side they are really dramatic, because in Afghanistan what we witnessed was the proclamation of a government that an effective government that took power by force, that in formal terms puts aside principles that we thought were absolutely ingrained in our international political architecture, namely democracy, the right of people to have a say on government, and the respect that everyone must have in front of the law, and namely women, by installing a gender apartheid, a system that is legally binding to discriminate against women. So one can say, well, it's not the first time we witness to violations of the democratic establishment or human rights in general, women rights in particular, but it's the first time that it is done in a clear way and to a certain extent accepted or tolerated by the international community, that really did not react completely in a strong fashion against this. And this gave the impression that the world is out of leadership, that actually the rule of the jungle might apply. And actually a lot of observers were expecting to see China showing its muscles in Taiwan. This did not happen for a variety of reasons. We are not going to speak about China today, but I think one of the major reasons was exactly this COVID zero ideology that is now very much fixed in China, and it is incompatible, among many other things, with invasions of other countries. And of course, I think it is as well a very important factor in the relative calm on the Himalayan border with India. But it did happen, the big repercussion happened exactly in Europe, with Russia invading Ukraine. I mean, it was not the first time. It did make some other foreign interventions that are very doubtful. But for the first time, Russia did not make any plausible claim. I mean, in 2014, when there was the first invasion in the east of the country, Russia claimed it was Ukrainians, separatist Ukrainians, that made the war against the government. Regarding Crimea, well, it is presented as a special situation, since it joined Ukraine, it left Russia and it joined Ukraine in 1954, and so it was supposed to be a recent acquisition. The big novelty is that this invasion of Ukraine is blunt, clear, formal, and does not at all search for the political international justification. It is just brutal force and completely absurd arguments of denazification and things like that. And actually, this invasion took place after summits between Mr. Putin and Mr. Biden. And from these summits, we heard the President of the United States repeating that Russia would pay a big price, but not saying clearly, you don't dare doing this. And this is something that is really showed a weakness of our international construction. Events in Kyiv are showing that most likely the Russian president miscalculated the situation. But anyway, I think we are leaving a great challenge to principles that we supposed were already enshrined in the international order. This situation also impacts very much in South Asia. And Pakistan became as Dr. Wolf will explain, a very important player in this game. And that's very interesting to see how things are playing and how the indirect impacts might be very different from the ones that could be expected. But this is what Dr. Wolf will explain now in detail. I would like to call all of your attention to Dr. Wolf and his words. I think they really deserve our full attention. Thank you.
Yeah, dear Paulo, thank you very much for your kind word of introduction, and in particular also that you draw such excellent larger picture, which prepares perfectly the ground for my own presentation. It's, of course, for me also a great pleasure and honor to share my views with you on contemporary international developments in general and regarding the impact on Pakistan in particular, as Paulo already indicated. But before I start my elaboration on the trajectories of Pakistan's foreign policy, I also want to thank Professor Carr, Professor Dev, and Professor Sharma for hosting and conducting this webinar on such an important topic and at such a crucial point of time. Pakistan's future course will have severe impacts not only for India and the whole of the South Asian region, but for Western countries as well. Pakistan's role and support for the Taliban in Afghanistan during the last decades, the fact that the country is home to some of the most wanted terrorists worldwide, the truism that it constitutes an epicenter for rapidly growing militant jihadism are just some examples. Pakistan furthermore enjoys tremendous support from the European Union in form of aid, trade benefits, namely the Generalized Scheme of Preference Plus or just GSP Plus and other kind of grant programs. And this despite the worsening situation of minorities and human rights. All this are serious reasons for experts and decision makers to keep a close eye on Pakistan's developments. However, as we all know, contemporary international relations are at the moment focusing in particular on the events on Europe's eastern flank. The Russian invasion of Ukraine marks one of the most decisive moments in modern history. Before Putin launched his latest unprovoked aggression against a neighboring state, the notion was prevalent among politicians, analysts, and the common public that Europe would not experience yet another large-scale armored confrontation. The current Russian war crimes and atrocities, including the conduction of systematic targeted kill assaults against civilians on European soil, were unimaginable just a short time ago. The speed of this escalation is keeping the free, democratic world and its liberal international order in suspense. Furthermore, deployed Russian weapon systems are becoming more advanced and deadly. The blind military tactics are increasingly horrifying. For instance, the shelling of the Zaporizhzhia plant, Europe's largest nuclear power facility, or the strike against the Kyiv Institute of Physics and Technology. Besides playing the nuclear card, clearly surpassing the pure formulating of a threat through the conduction of concrete measures, according to US President Biden, Russian President Putin is waging the use of chemical weapons in Ukraine as well. These developments underline the global dimension of the Ukrainian war. Moreover, Putin's aggression does not provide any room for any country to remain a non-partisan, neutral bystander. It does not allow for wishful thinking or hope of being unaffected, either due to geographical distance or to a perceived or unproclaimed lack of international leverage. The increasing sanctions by the US and its allies and the immediate and long-term economic implications of Russia's war of attrition in Ukraine are creating severe food shortages and will narrow down traditional, entrenched, and/or alternative business models. Consequently, governments worldwide are trying to assess both the contemporary and future ramifications of Putin's war on Ukraine and their own states and societies. However, at a time in which especially Western countries are suffering still limited economic hardships, such as price hikes for gasoline and energy, Afghans are experiencing already more dramatic impacts. Of course, the re-establishment of the Islamic Emirate last August led to the downfall of a democratically elected government. Since the Taliban seized power in Kabul, the overall living conditions of the Afghan people are rapidly deteriorating. Besides a collapsing economy, according to the United Nations, the country is on the brink of the world's worst humanitarian crisis. Beyond economic conditions, the law and order situation is also breaking down. Robberies, extortions, kidnapping, and killing for ransom are becoming the norm. Instead of curtailing these high crime levels, the Taliban worsens the circumstances. Yet the situation became even more worse since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The Taliban clearly exploited the fact that attention by international observers focuses on Ukraine. Concretely, the Taliban broke all promises of respecting the rights of its female citizenry and conducting a large-scale crackdown on all kinds of political freedoms and rights by enforcing new draconian laws suppressing the Afghan people. The Taliban are tightening their control amid growing reports of detentions, rapes, and executions of persons belonging to minorities, rights advocates, women, and people associated with either the old government or the new resistance. Moreover, it is also clear that the Taliban are either nor willing or nor able to act against foreign Islamist militants such as Al-Qaeda and Islamic State, or against regional terrorist groups. For analysts, it does not come by surprise that both Pakistan and the Afghan Taliban are teetering on the brink of a major crisis. The Taliban are increasingly defying Pakistan. They are challenging the status of the Afghan-Pakistan border, the so-called Durand Line, and providing a safe haven to an anti-Pakistan insurgency group, the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, also known as the Pakistan Taliban or just TTP. The TTP, which has killed thousands of Pakistanis, seeks to establish a Taliban-style Sharia-compliant state in Pakistan. This has clearly stunned the Pakistani establishment, which was actually operating on the assumption that the Afghan Taliban would be beholden to support Pakistan for years out of gratitude. Instead, since the Taliban's takeover, Pakistan witnessed a severe uptick of militant activities targeting Pakistan security forces along the Afghan border. For example, on April 21, in a major escalation, Pakistan carried out coordinated airstrikes inside Afghanistan at suspected TTP locations. However, the operation unfortunately ended up killing civilians. In response, the Taliban threatened Islamabad regarding any further attacks on Afghan soil. For its part, Pakistan indicated that it may engage in cross-border action again. However, besides the search for more coercive leverage against the Taliban, there is no strong indication that Pakistan is either willing or ready to seriously turn against the Islamic Emirate. This turn of events raises questions among both Pakistani and international observers. First, is there a Ukraine factor in Pakistani politics? Second, can we expect a change in the strategic thinking among Pakistani foreign and security policy circles? Third, what are the driving factors of such a potential transition? Fourth, and finally, how could such a potential new Pakistani policy affect India-Pakistan relations? In order to assess how far there is a Ukrainian factor in Pakistani politics, it is essential to recall the country's latest developments. In the last weeks, Pakistan witnessed a most severe political turmoil, leading to a change in government. Prime Minister Imran Khan, who used every available means, mostly unconstitutional and illegal, to stay in power, lost a non-confidence vote, and opposition leader Shahbaz Sharif was elected as new prime minister. Well, short-lived and unstable governments, the armies and secret service dominant role in the country's decision-making, and a growing leverage by Islamist forces within the institutional administrative structure are most noteworthy characteristics of Pakistan's political arena. In fact, the ousting of successive administration is as old as Pakistan itself. According to observers, almost all of Pakistan's political and religious parties were involved in past toppling of governments. Khan, too, faced frequent pressure from the opposition, Islamist clerics, and other domestic socio-political actors since he became prime minister in 2018. Yet, until April 10 this year, Khan had survived all attempts to remove him from office. Analysts agree that Khan's political resilience solely derived from the fact that he was supported by the military top brass. It is also generally assumed that Khan enjoys much goodwill among many of Pakistan's religious conservatives. Considering the numerous failures since 2018 to change the government in Islamabad, one must wonder what made the opposition successful this time. There are no doubts that recessions and other mild developments, for instance, the general mismanagement of government affairs, unfulfilled promises of reforms, Islamic radicalization and toxic polarization, corruption, security-related instability, increasing dependence on China, complaints of Khan's personalized and autocratic style of governments, among other, were at play. However, according to experts, the major reason for Khan's demise was that he lost support by the army's leadership, especially by the Chief of Army Staff, General Bachelor. It is argued that a major civil-military divide emerged during the last year, sharpened by disagreements over the appointment of the new Director General or the Inter-Service Intelligence Boss, ISI. Also, Khan's decision to delay the granting of a term extension to General Bachelor as Chief of Army Staff further strained his relationship with the military. Khan's eulogy of Osama bin Laden or the description of the takeover of Kabul by the religious fanatic Taliban as breaking the shackles of slavery created additional setbacks, not only in Washington ties with Islamabad, but also in ties between Khan and the military top echelon. Khan's increasingly strident criticism of the European Union and his pro-Islamist policies, which were leading to a severe deterioration of human rights and living conditions among minorities in Pakistan, not only raised eyebrows in Brussels, but also created serious concerns among Pakistan's establishment. Khan's stand on Russia's war against Ukraine led to a further escalation in civil-military relations. On February 23, Imran Khan arrived in Moscow for a 2-day visit. According to open sources, the former Prime Minister's Russia trip was for an exchange of views on major regional and international issues, aiming at a reset of bilateral ties and expanding cooperation in the energy sector. When opening the discussions, Imran Khan shows a remarkable, peculiar statement. Referring to the then current situation, he said, "What a time I have come, so much excitement." Even before Khan's departure to Moscow, it was well known that Russia was again taking unprovoked coercive measures against Ukraine. Making the situation worse, just a few hours after Khan's dubious remark, Russia conducted a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. As such, it does not come by surprise that Khan's appearance in Moscow raised criticisms. Commentators described the first visit by a Pakistani prime minister to Russia after 23 years as ill-timed. Moreover, Khan's refusal to condemn Russia's aggression against Ukraine was interpreted by Pakistani diplomatic circles as a step towards further isolation. Instead of supporting the international community in its increasing economic sanction aimed at convincing Putin to stop the war, Khan signed import deals with Moscow worth of billions of dollars. Khan's approach towards the Russia-Ukraine war did not find the blessings of the army's top brass is best expressed in statements by General Bachelor, who took the opposite stand. Speaking at the recent Islamabad security dialogue, General Bachelor called for an immediate stop of the Russian invasion, terming it as a great strategy. Moreover, he expressed Pakistan's serious concerns over the conflict, adding that Russia's aggression against a smaller country cannot be condoned. Bachelor thus clearly distanced himself from Khan. There are several other reasons why Khan's ignorance of the obvious plight of the Ukrainian people and the apparent Russian war crimes were not well taken by Pakistani elites. The fact that Ukraine was an increasingly important supplier of military equipment as well as wheat are not to be understated. However, the final trigger contributing to the end of the often called Khan-Bachelor regime, a term used to describe the initial cordiality between the Chief of Army Staff and the Prime Minister, was Khan's claim of a foreign conspiracy against him because he was not willing to follow the US point of view regarding Ukraine, which was combined with a call for closer relations with both China and Russia. This created a severe burden in US-Pakistan relations, which are already at a historical low point. Yet, there is something else even more important than the fact that Khan stopped telling what Bachelor or other high-ranking officer wanted to hear. Khan intensified his instrumentalization of what he called Pakistan's independent foreign policy for his own political ends. More concretely, he pushed for the polarization of both institutions and society along anti-American, anti-Western lines, either so as to support for his own immediate political survival or to improve his future chances for a potential return to the Prime Minister office. It seems Khan clearly crossed a red line and forced both Bachelor and the military spokesman Major General Baba Iftikhar to make further statements, noting that Khan's anti-West and pro-Russia policies do not reflect the stand of the army and are not in the national interest. Thus, it was stated that Pakistan does not believe in camp politics and the country's bilateral relations with its partners are not to be held on the expense of relations with other states. In other words, the army wants to have a balanced relationship between both Washington and Beijing. Khan's rapprochement towards Russia does not fit well into that picture. Moreover, according to observers, it seems that there is still substantial mistrust vis-à-vis Moscow, despite the improvement of the Pakistan-Russian ties during the last years. This is perhaps why Pakistan's military also dismissed allegation by Khan that the United States had conspired with his political opponents to force him from office. In sum, one can state that there is a Ukraine factor in Pakistani politics. However, Khan's Russia visit and his refusal to condemn Putin's war on Europe was not the causal factor leading to his removal from office. It can be seen more accurately as a catalyst. Having said this, one now needs to take a closer look at the causes and consequences of the confrontation between Khan and General Bachelor. Severe tensions in civil-military relations and the removal of restive civilian leaders, most noteworthy here as Nawaz Sharif, are common phenomena in Pakistan. Usual triggers for confrontation include struggles over shared decision-making powers in specific policy fields or the distribution of economic prerogatives in general, more than major disagreements over concrete policy directions. At least so it was in the past. It is also not new that civilian leaders attempted to intervene into matters of military organizations, namely the appointment of top brass positions of both the Chief of Army Staff and Director General of the ISI. However, the ongoing confrontation between Khan and the army holds a much larger dimension. It is argued that Khan's Islamization and open anti-West policies contradicts not only the traditional view on national security interest and subsequent policy parameters, but both domestic and foreign, but also the evolving strategic thinking among the military top echelon. There are several indications hinting at changes in threat perception, which could lead to a transformation in the foreign policy envisioned by the army headquarters in Rawalpindi. As already indicated, it becomes obvious that Pakistan has no control over the Taliban in Afghanistan, and this despite their decade-long support for this religious extremist. The security situation on Pakistan's Afghan border is worsening, and the attacks by Afghanistan-based terrorists on Pakistan soil are rapidly increasing. The Chinese people and assets in Pakistan continue to be the victims of militant attacks are additional concerns, considering the increasing dependence of Islamabad on Beijing. The inability of the country's security forces to provide full protection for Chinese workers on Pakistani soil is increasingly perceived as a burden for the bilateral ties and might hamper the success of the China-Pakistan economic corridor. It seems that Rawalpindi started to identify internal extremism as a larger threat to the country than arch-rival India. As such, Khan's hesitation to constructively interact with New Delhi was also seen as adverse to the army's evolving approach towards India. In fact, Khan used all international platforms to unleash his anti-Indian rhetoric, thus undermining the Chief of Army Staff's apparent goal to normalize relationship between New Delhi and Islamabad. It is also interesting to note that Khan was the only Prime Minister of Pakistan who ever publicly insulted an Indian Prime Minister. Hence, after the removal of Imran Khan, such a major source for grievances between Islamabad and New Delhi from office, can we state that there is a window of opportunity for the improvement of India-Pakistan ties? From my perspective, yes, there is a chance towards an improvement in India-Pakistan relations. Among both military and civilian leadership in Pakistan, there are currently actors in power favoring an improvement of the relation between Islamabad and New Delhi. Bachelor made clear that he is interested in a dialogue with India beyond Kashmir by including trade and other issues. On the civilian side, with Shehbaz Sharif, Pakistan has now a prime minister known for his effective, pragmatic approach in tackling administrative problems and development challenges. Like his brother and former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, he values the advantages of increased economic interaction with India. Yet, unlike Nawaz, Shehbaz seeks cordial relation with the country's army instead of challenging their prerogatives. However, there are also several unknown factors which one needs to consider. The tenure of the Chief of Army Staff ends in November. At the moment, there is no clarity about his succession. Hence, there is no assurance regarding whether Bajwa's vision will be maintained by the next army chief. Here, it will be important to see how far the Army's Corps Commander Conference, Pakistan's most powerful institution, shares Bajwa's views on considering domestic security concerns as more significant than traditional threat perception regarding India. One also needs to be aware that Pakistan must hold new general elections in the near future. Imran Khan will continue his populist, Islamist, anti-Western and anti-Indian rhetoric to build up his support base among religious conservative sections. He will use any opportunity to further polarize Pakistan's fractured society, stir unrest, and undermine the work of the current government. This could not only become a severe challenge for the stability of Shahbaz Sharif's administration, but also reduce the chances for his re-election. In sum, there is a window of opportunity for improved bilateral ties between Pakistan and India, yet there is also a strong possibility that it will narrow soon. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Siegfried Wolf, for your extensive and precise and instructive lecture on the situation, on the impacts, the developments in Pakistan in connection with the international developments from Kabul to Kyiv, as was suggested to the theme of this webinar. And now we will be very glad to accept some questions and to have a dialogue on with Dr. Wolf on the content of his presentation. Who wants to raise any question, please? Okay, I have one here. Okay. Do everybody have access to these messages?
Yes, sir, I can read it out. So I can read it out.
Mohan Biswas. Dr. Wolf, are you reading it, or should we should the author read the issue? Well, there are several questions here. What do you think, Dr. Wolf?
Yeah, I can go through with you together, and perhaps, well, it starts already with a more larger picture. I think Paulo is a very well qualified in this direction, or I'm sure that you want to add something in this direction. I mean, there's one question by Kushal, two questions. Could this Russia-Ukraine war turn into a world war? 3. Second, how could the Russia-Ukraine war end? Well, personally, of course, I don't have a crystal ball, and of course, I hope it will end soon. But I'm a little bit afraid or worried, and how it looks to me is that I don't see any end or in the immediate future in sight. The potential for a larger escalation is there for sure. Much depends on how China will contribute. Much depends how NATO countries will continue or even step up its support for the Ukrainian forces, and how this is perceived by President Putin. Yeah, I mean, Putin has a lot of instruments, his weapons arsenal. It might be not necessarily bombs up, but think about cyber attacks against Western states or whatever, some electronic warfare. But I'm not a specialist on weapon systems. But yeah, there is an option, but I try to think optimistic that we will have still. I'm not sure if Paula wants to contribute a bit, or should we wait until I'm through the questions?
Well, I think that we have a lot of questions, and that's why I think it could be an idea to go through all of them. But you are right. I mean, if you allow me, Siegfried, as actually this will go into a different and very important aspect, which is the alliances, Pakistan in this chess game. I think that I mean, the issue of the world war is on the table. I personally don't think it's very likely, because I don't think China wants to get involved in this way in this confrontation. Actually, well, Russia had very few support only some diehard pro-Russian governments voted for its position. So for the time being, I do not think so, but I do think that the nuclear threats are there. They might come, people speak about tactical weapons. I think it is the tactical, I don't know if you recall, but some years ago, the Pakistani authorities spoke at length of this priority of installing tactical nuclear weapons in the border with India. I think this, in this point, I think that both the occupation that is still ongoing of the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, which is, by the way, the biggest in Europe, and Chernobyl occupation shows that Russia is prepared to have to put the nuclear issue on the ground. I mean, it's very simple, not very simple, but it can happen that a misguided missile lands in a nuclear power plant, and this has an effect that is not very, very different from a so-called nuclear tactical weapons. So this is one of the negative scenarios. There are many others. I don't think we are close to the end of this war. I think it is a long war. It is perhaps one of the wisest things that was said by President Macron, because there is no way I see that Russia will change its position. And I think NATO should never, never, never allow Russia to get to the end of this invasion. Yeah, please. Sorry for the time. Please, Siegfried, go ahead.
Thank you very much for your contribution, addition. I will turn now to Samintra. He has several questions, I just see. I will go point by point. How would the West look at Pakistan now that Russia, China, and Pakistan are making an alliance? Well, I would like to separate these points a little bit between US and Pakistan relation and then the issue of alliances. I don't think that the United States is much looking at the moment on Pakistan. Let's see, we are still waiting. I mean, this was, of course, there was a personal dimension between Biden and Khan. I think we have to wait until Biden calls on Shahbaz Sharif. Then we know a bit more how this, the situation will develop. But what Pakistan wants from the United States, more economic interaction, might partly true, but I don't think that the United States at the moment will see Pakistan just for a geo-economic lens. So for such, Pakistan has at the moment it's not the top priority among Washington's decision makers, security circles. Regarding the alliance issue, I don't see there much of an alliance between Russia, China, Pakistan. First of all, as I indicated in my presentation, there is still hesitation among the army, Pakistani army leadership to trust really Russia fully. We are at the beginning. We can talk perhaps in 5 years about it, 10 years. We don't know how everything develops, of course. But there, I don't see much of a kind of alliance. Yeah, perhaps, of course, there were some military supplies and some increased economic interaction when Pakistan decides to avoid to ignore the sanctions. But I also don't see this at the moment. And also, I mean, I'm not a specialist on Chinese-Russian relation, but how I understand is there are still a lot of problems to solve. They might have some common interest, but this will not lead to a really close alliance. And anyway, China has much what it wants. Economically, Russia will, when the sanctions are more and more effective, it means Russia has to turn towards China, which creates some dependencies, of course. So, and as Paulo mentioned, I don't think that China, of course, China will observe the Ukraine war very closely. It has even embedded journalists among Russian forces entrenched. But I don't think they will take too active position in favor of Moscow. Secondly, do you think any chance in change in equation vis-a-vis the relationship with India under the new Pakistan regime? Yeah, this is actually what I explained in my presentation, but I see their window of opportunity. But as I mentioned, there are still several white cards, unknown factors. Nawaz Sharif has to be re-elected, and first of all, on the civilian side, on the military side, the core commander conference. We need to see. That's very difficult to get the feeling how they're in which direction they are going, and but there was always an argument that they understand at least the power of the purse, but this argument, which means working in favor of improved economic relation, normalized relation with India, but this doesn't help really in the last 10 years. I didn't saw that this economic argument already was anyway convincing Pakistani military leadership to have now a good relation or improved relationship with India. But as I mentioned, when there's a chance, I think the chance is even higher at the moment than in the early 2000s when we think about the composite dialogue. Yeah, I think there is a kind of revival of this thinking we had under Musharraf, but this time really we have both sides promoting or show some interest in improved relations. Thirdly, what would the relationship between Afghanistan and Pakistan under the new Pakistani government? This is one of the most tricky questions. I would not say doesn't matter of the new government. I would say rather in general Pakistan. And as I indicated in my presentation, the situation is worsening. Yeah. I will not prognose a war between Islamic State or Pakistan, but the tension will increase for sure. And Pakistan has increasing problems, not only with the Pakistan Taliban, but also with the Islamic State Khorasan in the backyard. And this will be a big challenge. And of course, this issue is a burden for Pakistan-Afghanistan relation. Then we have also to see, we should never forget that despite Pakistani official rhetoric on Pakistan-Afghanistan relation, there are large-scale anti-Pakistan sentiments among Afghan people. They are not much in favor of talking now about general Afghan people. So, and the Taliban, I see when you read the news, Tolo News, which is more or less now the mouthpiece, unfortunately, of the Taliban, how the Taliban are trying to instrumentalize this anti-Pakistan sentiments among the Afghan people just to distract from the inability to run the country. Furthermore, we have also to see that that there's so many issues at the front line, but the biggest issue is that Pakistan establishment or the army has no concept at all which went beyond the takeover of the Taliban in Afghanistan. They have no idea how to manage the situation. They have no programs, no development programs, nothing. Yeah? This was 1 point issue the last 20 years, get the Taliban into power and US NATO out. That's it. Yeah. Perhaps there are some arguments, people make the argument that the Pakistan was more in favor of an inclusive government and not a complete takeover of the Taliban, but this is very speculative. But this is a major problem that Pakistan is now in a situation that they have more and more problems, security problems, and no idea, no vision how to deal with Afghanistan. So Samitra has another question. Also, how far the Shahbaz Sharif, the new prime minister, will be given a free hand by the Pakistan army in pursuing foreign relations. I don't think ever civilian government had a free hand in foreign policy. So only thing is it had in the past temporarily, depends on, like in the first 1 or 2 years with Khan and Bachelor, that we had increased interaction, like a consult, that they meet more often, but it was rather like that the Pakistan army informed the civilian government, the prime minister, what they're planning to do instead of, other way around. So I don't think that there will be any change in the near future. The only thing is when the civilians and the military on the same page, they might have some influence in operational terms, like when the Pakistani army gives green light to improve relationship with India in economic terms, then the civilian government has the mission to make it happen. The last question I see here is from Prabir. Sir, it is a fact that Pakistan's support for Russia is a proof that Pakistan mortgages her strategic autonomy to China. As I mentioned, I don't see this yet. I mean, nothing, Russia is not at the moment, it's far from being beyond any alternative to Chinese military equipment. And so, but let's see. No, I don't think so. Yeah, so we have to see how the next how it's developed. Yeah, but I don't see Russia as an alternative, neither as an alternative to Chinese strategic consideration when it comes to Pakistan, or in the form of an alliance. No, I don't think so.
Thank you very much, Siegfried. If you allow me, just let me just make 2 comments on 2 specific points you already covered, perhaps reinforcing your message. I think that really the big novelty of this speech of General Bajwa was that he very bluntly and explicitly condemned Imran Khan's position aligning with Russia and China against the United States, and even against India. He said in a very precise way that it is not in Pakistan's interest to have a conflict between China and India. It is worrying. Pakistan does not want this. Of course, that you can say, especially being Indians and being accustomed to listen a lot of talk that is really meaningless. It's for Westerners to believe. Well, was he really meaning that? I'm not sure. But I think he was being sincere. That's all I can tell you. I think he was being sincere. The issue is obviously that he is no longer going to be there in the end of 2022. Mr. Sharif, we don't know either what will happen to him. And anyway, as Siegfried explained, he is not really important in this equation. The generals are much more important than Mr. Sharif. But it was this speech he did, in Islamabad, in this annual conference on strategy, was really was really something. You know, I was, I think you should listen to it and consider it with detail. Well, so I think there is something, there might be something new from Pakistan. I do think so. And I think that not giving the opportunity to find out to what point this is true or not would be, would be to dismiss a very important opportunity. Otherwise, regarding another point that was already covered by Dr. Wolf, I mean, it's who is ruling the foreign policy of Pakistan? I mean, he already answered you, but let me just give you an example that for me was one of the most telling examples I've ever seen in my life. It was in the European Parliament. I was no longer a member of the European Parliament. I was in a session as SADF director, and Mrs. Asma Jahangir, she passed away some years ago, but she used to be a prominent leader in the Pakistan's People's Party, and she was, very much criticizing Pakistan. And there were some ladies, Pakistani diplomats, raising questions on to Mrs. Jahangir, and Mrs. Jahangir just looked at them, and in front of there were hundreds of people in the room, said, "Well, just finish the theater. We all know that you diplomats depend 100% from the generals. So don't pretend that you are representing any democratic government." And the ladies didn't say nothing, didn't say nothing, and that was it. It was nearly 10 years ago, I think, and I think it was a very telling moment. The diplomacy of Pakistan is an affair of generals, no doubt about that. Yes, please, Siegfried.
I just saw that another question appeared by Samindra, and actually it was a point which I'm thankful to this question, because this was a point which I wanted to make, and before I forget, I will do it now. Samindra's question is, so the position of Pakistan will remain the same in India's case also? I would a little bit rephrase this question, but I think this will be the same answer. The question one should ask now, how such, in case Bachelor, the follower of General Bachelor, shares his view too, will continue this policy. And on the civilian side, we have Shehbaz re-elected, and there might be this new trajectory in Pakistan foreign policy towards an entrenchment, improvement of India-Pakistan relations. So, just this scenario would work out. How it could look like. I mean, one thing one has to be sure, despite this landmark speech of Bachelor and that what he's planning to do, one should not expect that Pakistan will ever be restrained from its claims on Kashmir, or change its position on Kashmir, or will use any occasion to bring this topic up. This rhetoric will continue. Just also for the case, it's would be for any government in Pakistan not possible to do that when they want to get re-elected. But what we have is we have a ceasefire agreement at the line of control signed last year in February, which, to my knowledge, holds more or less, which is a quite improvement, which could indicate that Pakistan, at least reduces the level of support for cross-border terrorism in the way how it did in the past. So I could see here some a positive development. Yeah. Otherwise, we have a second issue, but here we have to see. Perhaps I will write this in one of my next comments. When you're interested, just have a look at our SADF website. I will focus on this question actually, and we have the bail against the sentence, a court sentence by a military court, an anti-terror court of Said Hafiz, the mastermind of the 2008 Mumbai attack, for 32 years. This took forever, but it happens at the moment. So perhaps the timing is also quite interesting to see. Of course, you can argue this was done because Pakistan needs immediate, urgently international money, has to aid, has to please the FATF and to avoid any kind of blacklisting, because there's no reason anymore to hold the FATF back from blacklisting Pakistan. Yeah. So they are getting worried in Islamabad regarding this. But we have to see, for example, Hafiz's son is also wanted by India as a terrorist. So we have to see if Pakistan follows this policy up and continues to arrest perhaps also Hafiz's son. So this would be then a clear message from Pakistan to India. See, we are seriously about this idea of normalization of the relations. This I just want to add. How, for example, and when I'm correctly, another interesting part is, but I have to double check this information, that Pakistan is planning to deploy a kind of trade minister, trade envoy to New Delhi in the mission. So in his mission in New Delhi. So let's see how it goes. So there are really clear indications that Pakistan is preparing the floor to talk about issues beyond Kashmir. So this would be the change in the relations. Yeah.
If I might just add 2 points, one more optimistic and another more pessimistic. The pessimistic is a point I've been always making. It relates to education. I think that the biggest drama of Pakistan is that, and actually, with Imran Khan, the situation got much worse, is that there is an indoctrination, a fanatic indoctrination that is being sponsored by the authorities. I mean, people speak about madrasa. The madrasas might, in some cases, be even more fanatic, but the most important thing is the public syllabus, is the public policy. And this fanatic indoctrination that goes to the point of completely putting upside down the history of Pakistan, because most of the history of Pakistan, of course, is India, nothing else but India, and erasing it. And this will take decades to overcome this situation, if ever we start overcoming it, because we didn't. I mean, it is, in my perspective, the biggest failure of the European Union is to not to have imposed the change of direction regarding education. Because if you are fomenting fanaticism on everyone, then the masses will want fanaticism. So that's the bad news. Well, the good news is regarding Kashmir, right? I was in Srinagar and elsewhere in Kashmir in 2016, and I actually drew a report that echoes a lot of my impressions. It is on our website in 2016. It's a policy brief, and my impression was, frankly, that the Indian policy was being suicidal and was going to that end. And I wrote that in 2016. And then I saw that this very, very debated decisions of the Modi administration that were very much criticized, but I think reality are showing that he did the right thing. There was no way that things could continue like they were. He had the courage to say we have to put things differently. He now, and that's not him, but the Indian society is coming to terms with the ethnic cleansing of the non-Muslims from Kashmir, for instance, that was hidden for so long in India. I mean, I'm not speaking about the rest of the world that did not even dream that this was a reality, but even in India, it was hidden. And so this is a new policy that is going to the roots, and apparently Pakistan is understanding it, and it is working, and it is perhaps one of the things that is working the best. And so I personally don't think Kashmir is a problem of the dimension that it was 10 years ago. I don't think so. And I don't think so because Prime Minister Modi really is decided to act on a direction that I think it is the best of the directions. And because the Indian society came to terms to this sort of wokeism, because people think that wokeism is something from the United States. It's not. It's very much alive in India. That says, oh, well, we just don't look at the ethnic cleansing that non-Muslims who were victims of in Kashmir because it's not politically correct or whatever. And so I'm positive there on the issue of Kashmir. I think that the masses of Pakistan will go in a different direction only some decades from now, when and if we change completely the policy regarding education in the country. Siegfried?
Just so another question, which is also very interesting and important to understand, which fits a little bit also in to your elaboration, Paulo. Why did Imran Khan fail to garner the support of the Islamist lobby in Pakistan despite projecting an anti-Indian and anti-West rhetoric? It's quite interesting. I guess Tritiman refers to two issues which pops up in my mind now: the Quadra protest and the long march of the cleric Rahman. I would argue, and Quadra protests were led by Jamaat-e-Islami, or at least they had a very important role in the Quadra protests against, which was indirectly, of course, a protest against Imran Khan, against the federal government, and cleric Rahman. I think in both cases, it's about, in Quadra, it's about not because Khan is not enough anti-West or anybody was questioning his stand on religious affairs. I mean, I think in this direction Khan did enough with his talk about Islamophobia, his agitation against the French state. There are many occasions. So, but as I see it, when clerics, or let's say clerics or religious or parties were acting, organizing agitation against Khan's former government, was mainly due to political reason, in particular about Rahman. It was clearly about political power, and protest. The Quadra protest movement were a straightforward regional issue. Yeah? I mean, the way how the central authority are treating the people in Quadra, the exploitation of Balochistan. I mean, this is a regional issue and has nothing to do really with Pakistan's Imran Khan's stand on religion. And otherwise, which is interesting in this direction, is what I'm more worried about is, or not worried, I'm concerned, which needs a clear observation. And Khan, what Paulo says, since Khan is in office, he pushes a kind of what I would say toxic polarization and Islamic radicalization. It's not only his promoting of blasphemy laws, it's, and as Paula mentioned, the changes in the curriculum. So he particularly tries to influence the middle class, to push a kind of radicalization. And this is worrying because actually Khan, when he was came into power, and the way how Western media appreciate Khan as a kind of avatar even, who will bring out change in Pakistan with this movement, and actually the opposite happened. But now it's the group which people were betting on, like the educated middle class. Khan contributed heavily to their radicalization. And this is for the future, what Paula would say, a very pessimistic point, which we have also to consider. One should wonder which kind of section from within the society will bring out positive change, a sustainable change, besides, of course, the leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other question coming from the audience? No other question? Professor Sharma, you want what do you think?
No, sir, I don't think there is any question, sir.
Very good. Well, I don't know if Dr. Wolf wants to make a final declaration. From my side, just let me tell you that it was an immense pleasure to be sharing some views with you and exchanging some ideas. And we are all in for the continuation of such efforts that, in our view, are very, very, very productive. So we are very, not only very honored, but very pleased with this invitation. And I think it was very successful. Dr. Wolf, I don't know if you want to say something now?
Yeah, not regarding content. I think I mentioned already enough, but also from my side, I want to say thank you one more for the invitation. And I will also want to thank you, particularly to Professor Sharma, to this excellent organization. It was really a nice pleasure working with you together to conducting this webinar, and would look very much forward, perhaps to another round of such a kind of webinar. Thank you very much. It was really an honor and pleasure.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much to all. So if you all agree with the permission of Dr. Carr and Professor Sharma, I will just end our webinar.
So we have a word of thanks session. May I now invite our student, Miss Susma Raut, to kindly deliver a word of thanks. Susma, are you there?
Yes, sir. Good evening, everyone. It is my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks to all who have helped us in making this international webinar such a great success. At the very outset, we would like to extend our profound thanks and gratitude to our Vice Principal, Sir Dr. Ramesh Gar, the head of the institution, for granting his approval and providing his perennial support and encouragement towards the successful conduct of this webinar. We express our heartiest thanks to Professor Swaran Singh, Sir, Professor at the Center for International Politics, Organization and Disarmament, the Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi.
Excuse me, Susma. You have changed your words. Please see carefully what you are saying. Swaran Singh is not here. Swaran Singh is not here.
But
Swaran Singh sir is not here. Swaran Singh sir is not here. Okay. Let me finish it on your behalf.
Okay,
we express our heartiest thanks to Mr. Paulo Kashaka sir, founder and executive director of the South Asia Democratic Forum, Brussels, Belgium, for accepting our invitation and taking out time from his busy schedule to chair this webinar. Sir, we felt deeply honored with your participation. Your encouraging participation as the chair has transmuted this occasion into a thought-provoking and vibrant academic event. Thank you very much, sir, for your presence with us. We extend our heartiest thanks and gratitude to our distinguished speaker, Dr. Siegfried Ulf, sir, Director of Research at South Asia Democratic Forum, Brussels, Belgium, and Senior Researcher at the South Asia Institute, Heidelberg University, Germany, for accepting our invitation despite his prior academic engagements. We also thank you for not only sparing your invaluable time with us, but for illuminating us with your constructive and captivating ideas concerning the assorted aspects of Pakistan's foreign policy right from Kabul to Kyiv and beyond as well. We look forward to more opportunities to hear your thoughts and ideas. Thank you very much, sir. Now, if you would like to thank to the president of the governing body of our institution, Dr. Sudipto Roy, sir, and all the members of the governing body for their constant moral support to our program. Our thanks also go to Dr. Subhajit Ghosh, sir, Bursar and NAC coordinator at our institution, and to Professor Sadhunath Kundu, sir, coordinator of the Internal Quality Assurance Cell, and Professor Praveer Kanti Basu, Secretary of the Teachers Council, for their continued moral support. We deeply acknowledge the unwavering support and guidance received from Professor Devadas Desar, head at the Department of Political Science. Thank you very much, sir. We would like to extend our sincere and heartiest thanks to Professor Abdul Khalik, sir, an assistant professor at the Department of Political Science, an assistant professor at the Department of Physics, for providing all-round technical assistance to our program. Our vote of thanks also go to Professor Dev Tanu Maji, sir, Professor Kamal Roy, sir, and Professor Anindita Mitra, ma'am, all at the Department of Political Science, for their continued moral support in organizing this webinar. We extend our heartiest thanks to all the teaching and non-teaching staff of our institutions for their moral support. A special thanks also go to all the students of the Department of Political Science for enthusiastically coordinating, supporting, and participating in this webinar. And last but not the least, our sincere thanks also go to all the respected participants present here for their active participation and for making this event a huge success. Thank you very much. I also thank to Ms. Susma Raut, our students, for her effort in organizing this webinar. And I also acknowledge the role played by Professor Saptaparna Saha, ma'am, an assistant professor at the Department of English, for providing her technical support to our program. I once again thank you all, and we look forward to see you all again in our forthcoming webinar. Wishing you all the best and a wonderful time ahead. Thank you very much. Good night. Thank you very much.